Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe and support me. Sophia stood at the edge of time, staring out into the endless horizon of shifting moments, a kaleidoscope of history and futures blending into a tapestry that only she, as a time traveler, could see. The citizens of Time Star had always been taught that their gift was a responsibility, a power to observe but never interfere, and Sophia had lived by this doctrine her entire life until now. Earth had always fascinated her, its people, their struggles, their empires rising and falling like the tides of an ancient ocean, all while completely unaware of the travelers who flitted through their histories like ghosts. But it wasn't until she encountered Daniel, a human historian, that she began to question everything she'd been taught. Her mission had been simple: observe the ancient Roman Empire during its twilight days, gather data, and return to Time Star. She had been traveling through the remnants of a forgotten villa near the coast when she first saw him. Daniel was bent over a dusty relic, his brow furrowed in concentration, as if the weight of the entire ancient world rested on his shoulders. Sophia had seen humans before, thousands, perhaps millions, but something about Daniel made her pause. He was different. There was a passion in his work, a reverence for the past that Sophia had never encountered in a human before. It was as though he could feel the weight of time itself, even without the ability to move through it. That was the moment Sophia's curiosity turned to something more. She watched him for days, careful to remain unseen, fascinated by the way he spoke about the past, not just as an observer, but as though he were somehow part of it. His love for history was palpable, and Sophia found herself drawn to him in a way that was both exciting and terrifying. It wasn't long before she made the decision to interact with him, though she knew the risks. Time Star's laws were clear: no interference with the natural timeline, no forming relationships with those bound by linear time. But the more she watched Daniel, the more she felt something stirring within her. She had to meet him, and so, against her better judgment, Sophia took on the guise of a fellow historian, one who shared Daniel's love for the ancient world. She approached him in the dusty halls of a Roman museum, feigning interest in the same exhibit. He looked up, his eyes meeting hers, and in that moment, the line between observer and participant blurred forever. "Quite the artifact, isn't it?" Sophia said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions brewing inside her. Daniel smiled, a warm, genuine smile that sent a thrill through her. "It's remarkable," he replied. "This piece of history has been lost for centuries, yet here it is, still telling its story." They fell into easy conversation, Sophia amazed at how effortlessly she could engage with him. She was careful, of course. Her knowledge of history was unparalleled, but she had to feign ignorance, let Daniel lead the discussions, all while hiding her true identity. Days turned into weeks, and soon, Sophia found herself a part of Daniel's research team. They traveled together, exploring ruins and ancient cities, piecing together the stories of civilizations long gone. And through it all, Sophia's feelings for him deepened. She had never experienced love before, not the kind humans spoke of so poetically, and yet here she was, a time traveler falling in love with a man bound by time. She knew it couldn't last. The Time Council would never allow it, and even if they didn't find out, the very nature of their relationship was a paradox. But in those moments, as they stood together under the shadow of ancient temples or gazed out over the ruins of once great cities, none of that mattered. For the first time in her life, Sophia felt truly alive. It wasn't long before Daniel began to notice things as small inconsistencies in her knowledge, the way she sometimes seemed to know things before they were discovered. He never questioned her directly, but Sophia could see the curiosity in his eyes, the subtle tension in his voice when he asked her how she knew certain details. She always had an answer prepared, a well-rehearsed explanation that deflected suspicion, but she knew it was only a matter of time before the truth came out. And then, one evening, as they sat together in a small cafe copyright near the ruins of Athens, Daniel asked the question she had been dreading. Sophia, he said, his voice soft but insistent, how do you know so much? It's more than just research. You talk about these places as if you've seen them firsthand. Her heart skipped a beat. She had always been so careful, so meticulous in maintaining her cover, but Daniel was too smart, too observant. She had underestimated him. Sophia hesitated, her mind racing through possible responses, but she knew that lying would only delay the inevitable. She had to tell him the truth. I have seen them firsthand, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm not like you, Daniel, I'm from another place. Another time. Daniel stared at her, his expression a mixture of disbelief and curiosity. What do you mean, another time? Sophia took a deep breath, the weight of her secret finally pressing down on her. I'm a time traveler, Daniel. I come from a place called Time Star. My people have the ability to move through time, to observe history as it happens. That's how I know so much. I've lived through these moments, seen them with my own eyes. For a long moment, Daniel said nothing. His eyes searched her face, as if trying to discern whether she was telling the truth or playing some elaborate joke. But Sophia's expression was solemn, and slowly, the reality of her words began to sink in. You're serious, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. You're really from another time? Sophia nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. I didn't mean for you to find out like this. I've broken so many rules just by being with you. My people don't allow us to interact with the past, but I couldn't help it. I had to know you. Daniel leaned back in his chair, his mind clearly struggling to process the information. It's unbelievable. I know, Sophia said, her voice soft. But it's the truth. For a long time, they sat in silence, the weight of the revelation hanging between them. Finally, Daniel spoke again, his voice filled with a mix of wonder and sadness. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Sophia looked down, her hands trembling slightly. I was afraid that you wouldn't believe me, that you'd think I was some kind of monster, and I didn't want to risk losing you. Daniel reached across the table, his hand covering hers. You're not a monster, Sophia, but this changes everything. I know, she whispered. And there's more. The time council, they're watching me. They know I've been spending too much time with you, and they've warned me to stop. If I don't, they'll erase your memories of me, of everything we've done together. Daniel's eyes widened in shock. They can do that? Sophia nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. Yes, and I can't let that happen. I can't lose you, Daniel. He squeezed her hand, his expression filled with determination. Then we'll find a way. We'll figure this out together. But even as he spoke the words, Sophia knew that their time was running out. The time council's patience was wearing thin, and soon, she would be forced to make an impossible choice: either return to Time Star and erase all traces of her life with Daniel, or stay with him and risk everything. In that moment, as they sat together in the fading light of the Cafe Tilde copyright, Sophia knew that her time was running out. Sophia sat in her apartment, staring at the small, holographic device in her hand. The message from the Time Council flickered before her, the warning unmistakable: cease all contact with Daniel or face permanent exile from Time Star. Her heart pounded in her chest. She had known this moment was coming, but now that it was here, the gravity of it was almost unbearable. Daniel was in the other room, poring over some ancient texts they'd collected from their last trip. He had taken the news of her time-traveling abilities better than she'd ever imagined. He had questions, of course, the endless questions about Time Star, about her people, about the way time itself worked. But more than that, he was determined to help her, to keep them together despite the impossible circumstances. She knew what the right thing to do was. She should walk away, erase herself from his memory, and return to the life she had known before. It was what every time traveler was trained to do: to observe, not participate. But now, all she could think about was the life she could have with him if she stayed. She imagined waking up every day beside him, exploring Earth's history together, building a future. It was a dream she never thought possible until Daniel had come into her life, but the cost of that dream was everything she had ever known. Time Star was not just her home, it was her identity. Giving it up meant she would be cut off from her people, her abilities, her very purpose. She would become a stranger in her own timeline. Sophia set the device down, her hands trembling. She couldn't let them take him from her. Not like this. Daniel emerged from the other room, rubbing his eyes. Hey, I've been thinking about that artifact we found in Grecia. There's something off about the dating on it. I think it might be older than we initially thought. He trailed off when he saw the look on her face. What is it? Sophia hesitated, not knowing how to begin. They're giving me one last chance, she said softly. If I don't leave, they'll erase everything, your memories, our time together. All of it. Daniel's face hardened. Number. We're not letting them do that. It's not that simple. If I don't comply, they'll exile me. I'll lose everything, Daniel. My ability to travel through time. Everything. Daniel crossed the room and took her hands in his eyes locked onto hers. But you'll still have me, we'll still have this life together, isn't that worth it? Her heart ached at the sincerity in his voice. I want to believe that. I do, but I don't know what kind of life I'll have if I give up my time traveling. I've never known anything else. Daniel's grip tightened. We'll figure it out. You're more than just a time traveler, Sophia. You're brilliant, curious, passionate. That's who you are, not your ability to jump through time. She closed her eyes, fighting back tears. I don't know if I can survive in a world where I'm always looking back on what I've lost. Then don't look back, Daniel said gently. Look forward. We'll build something new. You don't have to be alone in this. Sophia leaned into him, resting her forehead against his chest. She could feel the warmth of his skin, the steady beat of his heart, and it grounded her in the present moment as something she had rarely experienced, living as she did outside of time. Daniel wasn't just asking her to stay, he was offering her a future, one rooted in the here and now, a future she had never imagined before she met him. But as much as she wanted to believe it was that simple, she knew the consequences. Time Star's rules weren't just about preserving Historia, they were about maintaining the balance of the universe. Time was fragile, and even the smallest disruption could ripple through the centuries, causing unforeseen consequences. If she stayed, if she chose to live out the rest of her life with Daniel, she would be breaking the very laws that held the fabric of time together. What if I stay and something goes wrong? She whispered. What if my being here changes the future in ways we can't predict? Daniel's arms wrapped around her, holding her close. You're not going to break the universe, Sophia, and even if things change, maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe we're supposed to be together, and this is how it's meant to happen. Sophia wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that love could conquer the laws of time itself. But the fear lingered, gnawing at her. The device on the table beeped again, a reminder that her time was running out. She pulled away from Daniel, looking at the glowing message, the ultimatum hanging over her like a shadow. I have to decide, now. Daniel followed her gaze to the device, his expression unreadable. Whatever you choose, I'll be with you, but if you're asking me, I want you to stay. Sophia's mind raced, her thoughts a tangled web of emotion and logic. Could she really give it all up? Could she walk away from the life she had always known for a man who lived in one small moment of time? In that moment, she realized something profound. Time, for all its complexity, was just another construct. It had always been about the moments of those fleeting, precious seconds when the universe aligned, and everything felt right. She had spent her life chasing those moments across centuries, but the one that mattered most was here, now, with Daniel. I'm staying, she said, her voice steady. Daniel's face lit up with relief and joy, and he pulled her into a tight embrace. You won't regret this, I promise. Sophia smiled against his chest, feeling a sense of peace settle over her. For the first time, She wasn't worried about the future, or the past. All that mattered was now. She reached for the device, her hand hovering over the screen. One press, and she would sever her connection to Time Star forever. No more time traveling, no more missions, just her and Daniel, in the present. With a deep breath, she pressed the button. The device blinked once, then went dark. It was done. Sophia exhaled, feeling a strange mix of relief and loss wash over her. She had given up everything for this one moment, but it felt right. She wasn't alone. She had Daniel, and together, they would create a future that no time traveler could predict. As the days passed, Sophia and Daniel settled into their new life together. They continued their research, exploring the mysteries of history with a renewed sense of purpose. Every day was a new adventure, not because they could travel through time, but because they were building something real, something tangible, in the present. The Time Council never came for her. Perhaps they saw her choice as a natural consequence of her journey, or maybe they simply didn't care anymore. Whatever the reason, Sophia was free to live her life without fear of interference. And as the years went by, she and Daniel built a life filled with love, laughter, and discovery. They uncovered ancient secrets, explored forgotten ruins, and shared moments that would be etched into their memories forever. In the end, Sophia had found something more valuable than time itself. She had found love, and in that love, she had discovered a new way of living a life not bound by the past or the future, but rooted in the here and now. And that, she realized, was the greatest adventure of all.